Hello, and welcome back to Dark Souls Dissected. While I'm still doing research for the next video I have planned, I figured I could make a quicker video responding to a viewer question. And while I do so, I'd also like to take the opportunity to share the process of how I'm looking these things up. So let's get right into it. The first question comes from Ow My Eye. They ask, was wondering if you knew anything about the two dead snake men near Siegmeyer in Sen's Fortress. Sometimes they're dead, sometimes they're not. So I always assumed this was tied to Siegmeyer's progression. The implication is that he entered Sen's Fortress, couldn't figure out how to get past the boulder trap due to being too slow, so he instead goes down the ramp, kills these two snake men, and just kind of hangs out. But I also had a vague memory of seeing the snake men dead without Siegmeyer present. So does it really tie neatly to Siegmeyer's progression? Well, the answer is yes, it does. The snake men being dead is dependent on whether or not Siegmeyer's here. But at the same time, you can potentially find the snake man dead after he's already left, so I realize this sounds like a contradiction, but I believe I found the answer. First, let's take a look at what happens before Siegmeyer progresses at all. When he's trapped outside Sen's Fortress, we can teleport inside the level to see if they're living or dead at this moment, and as we can see, they're alive. How do I teleport? Well, my weapon of choice for the vast majority of Dark Souls testing is the debug interface for the Prepare to Die edition, which you can find on Nexus Mods. I could probably just as easily use Cheat Engine instead, and Cheat Engine certainly offers a lot more possibilities for manipulating the game. But I'm not really that competent when it comes to hacking or poking around the memory for answers, and I've just grown really fond of using debug. So to teleport in debug, there's 3 ways to do that. First, the menu called Debug Walkthrough lets you load up different maps with the test character, where you'll spawn in a predetermined location for that level. This is great for helping isolate variables, because we can go straight to Sen's Fortress without having played any of the game prior at all. At this moment, I haven't even escaped the Undead Asylum, as far as the game is concerned, so we can start to rule out events in other areas being related in some way. Something that's pretty cool with this map loading technique is that if you go to quit the game, it actually brings you back to the map menu, so you can easily teleport to another level anytime you want. Anything I've done with this test character, or any progress I've made, is kept. You're sort of creating your own new temporary playthrough session, and quitting to get to other maps won't reset things. However, what if you do want a clean slate? Let's say you killed an NPC, but then want to start their questline back over. Well, this is also super easy. If you back out of the map menu back to the main menu, the screen will flash green and everything will be wiped. This puts you back to having done nothing in the game. The second 2 methods of teleporting in debug are using exact coordinates or using characters as landmarks. For the former method, you can find a warp feature that allows your character to set XYZ coordinates and go straight there. I don't use this too often because it can be difficult to know where you need to go. I could look at my character's own coordinates to use as a basis for comparison, but that can be a lot of writing numbers down and having to navigate several different menus, so who really wants to do all that? If you're dead set on being able to teleport around the map freely during gameplay, outside tools like Cheat Engine and other programs have offered more flexible options, like pressing certain keys to teleport a few coordinates forward or above your current position. That's way better, but there's no way to do anything like that in debug, unfortunately. Lastly, I mentioned using characters as landmarks, and I use this constantly. By characters, I mean anything that shows up in the character menu, which includes enemies, NPCs, and bonfires. For any character you select, you can simply click on Move Position to this position, and you'll go straight there. The only difficulty is that the characters aren't named, so you either have to know what these numbers mean, look them up, or do some guesswork. But something that makes the guesswork really easy is that human-sized NPCs are almost always a C followed by all zeros, and bonfires are always a C1000. So I don't really have to memorize anything beyond that. If you can try to imagine warping to anywhere in the game you'd like, 9 times out of 10, it's near an NPC or bonfire that you could easily warp to. Okay, so with that massive tangent out of the way, back to the snake men. We determined that they're alive before Siegmeyer shows up. Now if we go back after ringing both bells, we can find them dead near Siegmeyer. Now if we get Siegmeyer to move to Anor Londo, after a couple of resets, the snake men are back. So now that we can be pretty sure this is all tied to Siegmeyer, is there something else we can do to take a closer look? This is where I look to another outside tool, created by Wolf2K, called Event Hook. This shows when various flags are tripped and allows you to ID them yourself and save them, if you can isolate and figure out what they are. This doesn't actually show exactly everything that happens with the flags, and sometimes there are more complex interactions or things that the software doesn't reveal, but it can still accomplish quite a lot. And most importantly, you can force flags. If I want a certain door to be open, I could just tell the game to have that door be open. This brings us back to Siegmeyer. A while back I tried to identify most of the flags relating to NPC quest lines to help iron out exactly how they work, so this was pretty easy to play with. What happens if we don't progress the game at all? Let's say we don't ring any bells, we don't do literally anything outside of telling the flag for Siegmeyer's quest line that, hey, he's inside Sen's Fortress now. Turning that on and reloading the area will result in the snakemen being dead, but Siegmeyer won't actually show up. I believe this is one of those complex interactions I mentioned. At this point, the game is likely aware that the gate to Sen's Fortress hasn't actually opened yet, so it sort of fights me on this flag. But nonetheless, I can now do nothing other than playing with this flag to see that it results in the snakemen being dead. I should quickly mention that there are actually two flags for how Siegmeyer winds up inside Sen's Fortress. His quest line momentarily diverges depending on whether or not you've talked to him at his first location. If you did talk to him here, you don't have to talk to him inside Sen's Fortress to progress his quest line. Simply moving the boulder trap out of the way will cause him to move to Anor Londo. If you didn't talk to him, you have to talk to him at his second location, in addition to moving the boulder trap, to get him to move on. So these two different scenarios for him being stuck at the boulder path are flags 1491 and 1492, respectively. It's both of these flags that, if they're on, results in the snakemen being dead, so this really nails down that the snakes being dead is tied to Siegmeyer's presence here. But earlier, I mentioned being able to see them dead without Siegmeyer being around. And in a normal playthrough, no one is teleporting into Sen's Fortress without opening the gate first. So how does this happen? Well, when you move the boulder trap to trigger Siegmeyer moving onto Anor Londo, that flag doesn't update in real time. We can check the status of that flag right after doing it, and it's like nothing happened. But when you reload the area, the game performs a check of some kind, and then it updates the flag. So it appears that this kind of delayed check is the culprit. If it needed to update the flag, then ostensibly there was a brief moment of time where the flags weren't updated. And apparently, that's enough time for the snake's dead or alive check to listen to the wrong flag. But now that the flag has updated properly, it won't make the same mistake for subsequent reloads, and the snakemen will forever be alive again. So what this means is seeing the snakes dead without Siegmeyer present should only happen once, if you happen to revisit this area of Sen's Fortress the first time after updating Siegmeyer's flag to move to Anor Londo. Hopefully this clears things up. I'm sure others in the community, like Hot Pocket Remix, could do a deeper dive into what's really happening with all of the flags, things like why the Sen's Fortress gate needs to be opened before Siegmeyer moves, or possibly more about the check for the snakes being alive or dead itself. But I'm confident enough we have our answer, and hopefully you were able to get a better understanding of how I test something like this. I think I'll be doing more of these response videos in the future, but for now I'll go back to chipping away at my next video. For that one, I'll not only be explaining an obscure mechanic, but I'm actually in the process of researching and learning new things about it right now, things that the community wasn't previously aware of. It's probably the most buggy and broken mechanic after Miracle of Resonance, so I hope you're looking forward to it. Until then, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below. I can't promise that every question will get a video response, especially not in a timely manner, but they can be future inspiration for videos just like this one. Thanks again for watching.